Braden, welcome to the show, man. It's great to visit with you.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So you're joining us from Corpus Christi.
Yep.
Right on. I've spent a little bit of time there over the years for various reasons, but primarily one of my best friends, they're from Portland, just outside of Corpus. And so his dad had a bay boat and an offshore rig. And so, every summer we'd head down there, and I was a lot younger, and it seemed like we were just trying to drink as much beer, and then, catching fish was a bonus, but we always caught a lot of red snapper. I mean, there's no doubt we were going to get into the snapper, just usually about 40 miles or so off the coast of Port A there, and find any oil rig and just hammer them. Some awesome memories. I wish I got to do it more. You live there, and just from reading a little bit about you, you are a professional fisherman or outdoorsman, or what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm in college.
Okay.
For starters. And I do kind of outdoor YouTube videos. That's how I make my money. I do, mainly offshore fishing and spear fishing stuff. But I'll do other stuff, inshore fishing. I'll do some hunting videos, which YouTube nowadays doesn't seem to like very much.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, that's what I do. I just like to film what I do for fun, really.
And what do you like to hunt?
Whitetail, aoudad, they're one of my favorites. Axes, I haven't shot an axis buck yet, but just the regular Texas animals for the most part.
I just got back from Maui a couple of weeks ago and shot a nice axis buck there. They're invasive introduced species, all free ranging stuff. Oh God, there's so many axis deer. But then did a little ocean kayak fishing, and you should put that on your bucket list. I know most college kids don't have that expendable income, but certainly put it on your short list, because that was for someone that enjoys fishing and spear fishing as much as you, dude. It's a sportsman's paradise for sure.
Yeah, I've wanted to trip over there for sure sometime.
Yeah. So spear fishing is your favorite fishing technique?
Yeah, I would say that for sure.
And primarily out of Port A, or do you travel and go to various places?
I'll travel around. Home base is Corpus, Port A. I have some buddies in Louisiana that I'll go trip over there to dive with. And then last fall, I made a trip to the Bahamas. So that was nice. Kind of my first out of country diving experience, but mainly here in the Gulf of Mexico.
So are you free diving or scuba?
Free diving.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had, you might follow him, but the surfer Mark Healy was on like a couple months ago, and
yeah, I follow him.
That was my indoctrination into free diving and spear fishing. And that, I've never done it personally. It's one of those things that's on the list. But it sure looks awesome. And for someone that likes hunting as much as I do, the idea of hunting fish below the surface.
That's kind of what gets me too, is, you're hunting fish. You're not waiting on a fish to come bite your lure. You can go make something happen. You don't have to sit there and wait all day.
So how does that play out? Because I've never experienced it. Are the fish really skittish? And say, I imagine you're fishing a lot of oil platforms.
Yeah, oil rigs, artificial structures, stuff like that. It really depends on the species of fish. Some are more spooky than others. Like, Cubera is the fish that I shot recently. They're known to be pretty spooky. Like, for example, I saw one probably 50 yards away a couple weeks ago, and the second it saw me, it was gone. So there's fish like that'll be really spooky, and then other fish, they just get really curious and they'll swim right up to your face. So
really,
yeah,
that seems ridiculous with sharks and stuff that would try to eat these fish, that are huge. Like, in a human presence, seems like it would be a lot bigger, more intimidating. So that's interesting that they're I think curious.
They just see these foreign creatures. I guess they think we're monkeys or something, and they kind of want to come check us out.
Fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of fish are curious. The older ones tend to be a lot smarter. Bigger fish, they're
Uh-huh.
smarter. They'll tend to be wary of you.
Huh.
But a lot of it has to do with um, kind of the way you behave underwater. If you
Mhm.
chase the fish, they kind of catch on. So as free divers, a lot of what we do is we dive down nonchalantly, not even paying any attention to the fish. And we'll oftentimes not even look at the fish. We might spot it in the distance, but we'll completely look away. We'll swim off kind of to the side. And oftentimes they'll just come book it right up to you and turn broadside.
Wow.
There's a
A-
little technique to it.
And how long can you stay underwater?
Personally, myself, my longest dive is 2.5 minutes. That was at like 50 feet, but
Huh.
average, 2 minutes, I would say, is where my dives are at.
And when
So
you come back up to the surface, are your lungs just screaming, or are you good enough to where, or have, you know, are your lungs accustomed to that? Because I can imagine like holding my breath for a minute, I would be like, God,
yeah, yeah.
gasping for air when that was over.
On deeper, longer dives, yeah, you're usually kind of short of breath.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, while free diving, we have to be really relaxed and stay calm because we're underwater. We can't just hit the surface whenever we want. We got to obviously swim back up. So, there's a lot of training, I guess, to stay calm and composed, but deeper, longer dives, definitely you need some air. That's why we dive with buddies in case something happens.
Yeah. So you're on a dive and you're about to shoot this giant fish, and let's not even talk about this specific fish yet,
Mhm.
but you're running out of oxygen and you shoot this fish. Is there now a struggle to get this fish to the surface, or how does that play out? Because you need
So,
air, you
yeah,
shot this fish. What happens now?
right. Well, first of all, usually I kind of try to play that. I
Mhm.
kind of have an internal timer. I know when I need to go up. I know maybe I shouldn't shoot this fish. But we actually use reels on our spear guns.
Mhm.
And if I absolutely have to breathe, I'll either not shoot the fish because I can't fight it on the way up, or I'll
Mhm.
just put my reel in the free spool and swim up and not have it put any pressure on me.
Okay. Okay.
But around these oil rigs, kind of the problem that we have, and the reason a lot of people don't shoot fish too deep is because if you shoot that fish and you need to breathe, it can dive down deeper and tangle all up into the rig legs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
ideally you want to shoot fish when you still have some air so you can kind of wrestle it up.
Uh-huh. Okay, makes
Mhm.
sense. The Gulf of Mexico is an amazing fishery, and we have quite a few different snapper species. I sent you a picture of one of them
Mhm.
that was from, I was looking at the date on it, was from 2010, and we had caught our limits of red snapper and caught one other fish. And I was like, I wonder if this is a kubera. I remember my buddy's dad saying it was a dogfish snapper. Um, then there's also mangrove snapper. I mean, how many different snapper species are you likely to come across out of Port
Shoot.
A?
There's quite a bit actually. So, you got your red snapper.
That's what everybody hears about is red
What you
snapper.
caught was a mangrove snapper. Some
Mm-hmm.
people confuse those with dog snapper.
Yeah.
There's a slight variation. Dog snapper are a lot more rare here in the Texas area than those mangrove
Yeah.
snappers. But on top of those, you'll get lane snapper, vermilion snapper,
Vermilion. Yeah.
um, those Cubera snapper. They're pretty rare though. If you know where they're at, you can kind of find a few of them. But those are really your main snapper. There's a couple other ones that I think are classified as snapper, but we don't really call them snapper.
Mm-hmm. So is there, speaking of the kubera, which is a fish that you shot, um, is there a season or a limit? I mean, like that was one of the main reasons we stopped going every summer, is because the snapper season would be like, oh, you've got a 1 week window, and then the
Yeah.
winds blow, and then it's like, well, damn it isn't even worth doing it.
Hmm.
I think we've gotten better from a management standpoint of giving recreational anglers more opportunity, and the idea, and I've talked to Robin Rikers a bunch of times over the years, our coastal fisheries director, as far as like the whole Gulf of Mexico being managed as one red snapper population is ridiculous, because what we have off the coast of Texas isn't what they have in Florida or Alabama, Georgia. I mean, it's completely, these fish tend to stick close to one reef. They might go to the next one, but they're not migrating hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
So managing that seemed like a really poor management philosophy. But I think we're slowly getting away from that, which is a good thing. But do these kuberas have a strict season and bag limit?
Well, it's interesting because there's actually no regulation on the kuberas. They don't even mention them, I don't think, on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website, because no one really catches them. It's not really a fish most people can go target. I guess because there's not near the quantities of red snapper. So, I mean, there's really nothing about them.
Interesting. So I saw, I think, and it was very recently, it was this month, I saw a guy caught they're estimating 120-pound kubera out of Panama, out of a kayak.
I think I saw that just yesterday.
They released it, and they didn't have any way to get it. What is it? IGFA
certified.
Certified. They cut the fishing line, measured that up to the fish, and then that's how they measured it, and they didn't get a weight. But it wasn't. I don't think it was as big as the one that you caught. Regardless, first of all, have you, in your freediving experience, come across a big kubera before? Or is it so rare that this was like, wow, once in a lifetime thing?
It's usually something you don't ever see. Last summer, I kind of found some areas where I saw them. I mean, I'd seen a couple in completely different areas too. So I kind of have a couple spots I know that they're at. But it's actually kind of funny. Before I speared the fish, just recently, I went out a week prior, and I think I saw the same fish.
Really?
But I didn't have the right gear to land it. The gun I was using was made to shoot like red snapper, nothing for a giant kubera. And I actually had a shot on this fish, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to land this thing. I need to come back with the right equipment, the big gun, as I called it. So I came back the next week, and that's when I guess I saw the same fish, I'm assuming. So that's when it happened.
So when you talk about the big gun, is that a different gauge of spear size, or just the tackle, like the line and the reel?
Pretty much just bigger. I actually have it right here. It's really long, but
oh wow, yeah.
There's the reel you can see there. But really, by big gun, more power, more range, and the spear is a lot longer, so it's typically a lot heavier. So I'll get more punch into the fish.
And how close do you have to be to make I guess you could say ethical shot, or a shot is going to kill the fish? And
so it really depends on the spear gun. I would say for most people, 10, 15 feet. Some of your guns, like this one, it'll shoot a little over 20 feet and actually have penetration. So
wow. So you think you saw this fish prior, which is very interesting.
Assuming it was the same one.
Right. Well, it doesn't seem like these things are on under every tree, or I guess underwater on every reef. So pretty rare, like you said, so rare that we don't even have a season or bag limit on the species. Had you ever shot a kubera before?
I shot one, and it was not that big. It was pretty small. But going this time around, I was going to wait for the big one, because they're a fish that does grow old. So as a diver and someone that wants to conserve the kubera snapper, now I want to wait and shoot one that's mature. It's lived its life. Let the babies grow. So
Interesting. And I was reading online that their typical size is between like 8 and 30 pounds. Like what if you were to just say targeting red snapper, you caught a Cubera, you reel it up, it's going to be like 8 to 30 pounds. 30
Yeah,
pound snapper is still a huge
that's a big
fish.
snapper. Yeah.
But you said they get a lot older than a red snapper, and that's why this one
Oh
that
yeah.
you shot was, how long was it?
To the tip of the tail, it was 60 inches.
Golly. So that one that I was talking about in Panama, they measured the fishing line. It was like 54 and some change. So this one was this was 60 inches. And the official weight?
137 is what we got on the
Wow.
scale.
And that's a new world record, all tackle.
See, that's the thing. Technically, I guess it is the record fish, but IGFA only has fishing, and they actually have like certain liter material or like pound tests allowed. So I don't think IGFA has wanting anything to do with it. I honestly haven't submitted anything yet. I have everything ready, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet.
Do they have a spearfishing category?
There is a separate spearfishing world record deal. I haven't really looked into it all yet. I'm going to talk
Such
to
a niche sport, but it's gaining popularity, but it's definitely not like mainstream.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's not many people that do it, especially down here. I could probably count the people that do it down here.
Yeah.
So
So this was June 3rd, and you're about, obviously we don't want your GPS cords, but about how far off the coast are you?
I was about, trying to remember, I have it in nauticals, probably 50, 60 miles out.
And so college kid, again, probably not a lot of expendable income. Are you going with a friend, or because I mean, we know what the price of fuel is thanks to Biden right now.
Yeah.
He'll say it's Putin's fault, but we are not stupid. We saw what gas was doing before they invaded Ukraine. But,
it's hard right now for sure. Yeah. Usually I'll split fuel. I'll bring some people. But luckily the boat I have, a lot of people consider a bay boat. It's actually a Ponga. They're really popular in Mexico, South America. So I'll get like 4 miles a gallon. So, the trips are still expensive for me.
Yeah.
But in comparison to guys on offshore boats, quote unquote, it's nothing compared to them. But
so you have to wait for a calm day to go.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone when I probably shouldn't have been out there.
Yeah.
It's just not very fun. So,
yeah. What do you think the offshore fishery off the coast of Texas would look like if it wasn't for oil rigs?
Terrible.
Right.
See, that's something that, I actually have a strong opinion about. And I tell people, without these oil rigs, our bottom for the most part is just muck.
Right.
There's nothing, aside from a few pinnacles we'll have here and there, which are really just salt domes, hard substrate. There's really not much. These oil rigs, people can see it in my videos. They're just giant cities of fish. There's coral, there's tiny reef fish all over the rigs, and it goes up the food chain. It's actually pretty wild whenever you realize that these are just perfect fish habitats.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Oil industry gets a bad rep offshore, obviously, from a lot of people, but for what it is, the rigs serve a really good purpose for, fish, in my opinion, and the fishery. Fishermen have a place to go catch food. So,
and I mean, the most important commercial fishery we have off the coast is red snapper. That wouldn't exist if it wasn't for these rigs.
Our spots will be limited. Yeah, for sure.
When you speared this fish, what was first of all, when you saw it, you're like, oh, I've seen that fish before, going back to the week prior. Then you make a stalk on this fish, or did he just come right up to you?
Well, right when we slipped in the water, at first I didn't see it because I kind of knew where this fish was sitting from the week before, but the current this day was different. So we actually had to tie the boat up kind of where that fish was at. So I was kind of worried I'd already spooked it off. But after I kind of swam into the area where this fish was at, I think I spotted it. I'm assuming it was the same fish. And I guess as soon as it saw me, it just completely hightailed out of there. So like, oh no, like we just drove all this way just for this one fish. That's all I was out there for. So I stopped. My brother was in the water with me. I was like, just hold up. Let's kind of swim outside, give this thing some space. So we kind of swam outside of the rig and gave it some time. And I kind of crept back in on that other side where I saw that fish. And I just relaxed, breathed up, and I made a dive. And down, I was at 66 feet, probably 65 when I saw the fish. And it was just sitting there. All I saw was its head kind of quartering towards me. And I don't know what I looked like, but I probably had eyes that big. I was like, oh shoot, that's the fish. And I just kind of froze. At that depth, I was just kind of sinking.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get close because these fish are kind of notorious for being hard to punch through. They're pretty strong armored fish. So I kind of just sank down, and it's right when I thought I was close enough to where the fish would spook if I waited any longer. I pulled the trigger, and then the rest was history.
And you're at 60 something feet. Did this fish put up a fight?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I mean, does the shot just have an immediate impact on the fish? I mean, we all know
it can. So yeah. The goal is to, put some damage, hurt the fish so we can get it quickly. You can spine a fish so where they can't swim anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll hit it perfect in the head. So you stone it, it's out the second it hits. But I was worried that my spear wouldn't get through if I shot it in the head because they're so dense. So I shot it right behind, center mass where it would hurt the fish. Yeah. But also there was kind of a technique to it. It was around a bunch of legs. The water we were in was like 200 feet deep. I'm not swimming down to 200 feet to untangle a fish. It's also way too murky down there. So the idea was to shoot it and have it wrap up right there so I can go get it.
So come back to the surface, then go back down and get it.
Correct. Okay. Correct. So as soon as I shot, this fish just went berserk. But thankfully, it was around all these legs. It just wrapped itself up like insanely on the rigs and pretty much just beat itself and died right there. You can't see it in the picture that is out on the internet, but the other side of the fish, there's a shot where the shot ripped. There's a huge gash, probably like that long, where it just almost ripped the whole spear out. That's how hard it was fighting it.
Huh. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you go back down, collect your prize, which trophy, obviously a world record, and then some. I don't know about eating fish that size. I'm sure that they're phenomenal. I mean, but it's like red snapper. Actually,
that's the thing. So I actually read some comments from one of the articles that went out. So many people are saying, he probably threw it away, terrible eating. But believe it or not, I cleaned it. It just looked like a giant red snapper. The meat,
right?
It's white and looked great. No worms. And we fried it up. I had it at a friend's house with a bunch of other friends of his, and everyone loved it. Everyone that's eaten it's loved it. I think it's great. It's just a mega snapper. And one of my buddies in Louisiana, he swears that the throat of the kuberas is one of his favorite things to eat in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a huge fish, which people tend to kind of not want to eat. But yeah, the kubera it's great. I still have a bunch in the freezer. I plan on eating all of it. So
yeah. When we would catch red snapper, again, I don't think I've been in about 4 or 5 years, but my buddy's dad religiously saves the cheeks and throats.
Yep.
Never waste any of it. And that meat is, I think, the most tender part of the fish. And you're already
Exactly.
talking about a fish that
Yeah.
as soon as we got back to Fisherman's Wharf, it's like, where's the soy sauce? Somebody slice this thing up. Let's get going.
Mhm.
A little lime, eat it right there.
Yeah.
While you're cleaning the boat, it's tough to beat that fresh sashimi. In your spear fishing adventures, have you ever come across a fish out there where you're like, oh shit, I didn't want to see that?
As in like being scared of it?
Like a
or just
shark, like a
Oh
you know,
yeah.
a big ass shark where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
it makes you think twice about the you're not the apex predator in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, that's always in your mind, like,
Uh-huh.
as soon as you get in the water, you're not the big predator. But we'll see big bull sharks, big sandbar sharks. They've kind of given me a scare. Like they'll do like a quick charge and kind of move off. I've had shot fish before and been pulling it up as I'm swimming to the surface, and a shark will just come up and take its head off, like right down below me.
Here comes the tax man.
Yeah. But thankfully, I mean, maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I haven't seen anything too crazy in the water.
Uh-huh.
I've had a big mako shark come up to my boat before when I was, in the boat. But I know, there's big fish out there. People catch 12-foot tiger sharks off the beach here all the time.
I think
hammerheads.
Texas record was like caught off a Bob Hall pier. Like,
and
that's a weird, interesting subculture of humans, the shark fishermen that spend all night out on the piers, dude. I did that and did an interview with some of them just because I want to immerse myself in this. And it's I'm not saying that they're seedy people, but that is it's an interesting scene. They're dedicated.
Yeah.
I'll give them that.
It's interesting.
One dude's jumping off the end of the pier. He's got a kayak tied to it. It's totally illegal, but for $20, maybe it was even $10, he'll jump out in the pitch black dark off the pier and run your bait out like a couple miles in his kayak.
Yeah.
And like, God, all right, this is interesting to see that.
Yeah, pretty wild.
But yeah,
people get big sharks here pretty often, in the summertime. And I was actually, I always talk to my buddies from Louisiana about diving because they're pretty serious about it. But where I'm at, this area actually has a super high concentration of mako sharks, like ridiculous amounts. There's a shark tracker we'll check, and they'll be 6-7 miles offshore, like right here in our close rigs. And I have another buddy he's scarred for life. Like he won't even spearfish anymore because he used to work on, I guess, with a private captain, and they would go bill fishing. I don't know if it was a marlin or swordfish. I'm assuming it was a marlin, but I think he said it was like a 400 or 500 pound marlin they had up to the boat, and a mako just came up and chomped it right there.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, yep, not happening.
I'm not getting in that water. Oh man. So did you know once you landed this fish that it was probably a world record?
See, that's the funny thing. I honestly it didn't cross my mind because,
you just saw it the week before and like, that's a big ass Cubera snapper. I got to go back and hit it.
Yeah. So, I really didn't think it was that big till it was in the boat. Like I knew it was a big fish.
Right.
But in the water, I was like 80 pounds. And keep in mind, I shot one Cubera prior. I'd never seen any other Cuberas in person. Some of my buddies, I've shot 80, 100 pounders. But I realized, the moment I realized it was that big was when I tried to pick it up. Because the week prior, we had gone spearfishing for amberjack, and I shot a 100-pound amberjack, and I could pick it up like no problem.
Right.
But I tried to pick this Cubera up, and I was like, this ain't 100 pounds. Like this is a little bit bigger. So, that's kind of in the boat when we were trying to, pick it up. started to realize this is pretty big.
Uh,
But yeah, record never crossed my mind. I wasn't out there trying to break a record.
mhm.
That was never the thing. I just love the spearfish. I like shooting big fish. It's kind of, the
Yeah.
hunt, thrill of the hunt. But
What
just
was the
turned
biggest fish that you'd ever shot prior to this one? The amberjack?
as far as weight goes, probably the amberjack. I've shot big cobia before. I shot this year like an 80 something pound wahoo.
Oh, nice.
But as far as weight, yeah, probably that amberjack. But that was the week prior. So
The guy that took me kayak fishing on Maui, we had an interesting exchange because to me it seemed like we wasted half of the day trying to catch bait to then catch the big fish. I was like, you guys don't just have a bait shop around here? He's like, you mean you have places in Texas that sell live bait? I was like, yeah, like all up and down the coast. You just go buy your piggy perch or your croaker or whatever, depending on what species you're targeting. He's like, yeah, that's not a thing here. So we have to use a rod and reel to catch the bait, to put on a bigger rod and reel to actually go fishing. And he's like, the saying is no bait by 8. We just go in. And some days we don't find the bait, and some days we do.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So we spent like 3 hours trying to catch bait and finally caught one of these little, was some type of mackerel. He's like, oh yeah, that's the one we want, and put it on. And unfortunately, well, at least we caught something, but it was a barracuda. It wasn't tuna or wahoo or mahi we were looking for. But it's just it's interesting to see how different cultures, different regions have to go about it. It's much more difficult to have to catch the bait, but probably more rewarding when you do catch.
I mean, that's kind of cool. I mean, you can get a lot of bait here, obviously.
Yeah.
I used to work on a charter boat offshore, and whenever you go like amberjack fishing or, for some bigger fish, sometimes we'll stop at the rigs and sabiki bait kind of price what you were doing.
Yeah.
But that was maybe an hour and a half. It never went, too long.
Yeah. Yeah. But, well, cool stuff, man. If you want to give us your, I know you have a great YouTube page. I messaged you on Instagram, so you're on there as well. If you want to tell folks where they can follow along and enjoy your underwater adventures.
Yeah. So my YouTube and Instagram is pretty much the same thing. It's my name, Braden Sherron, BradenSherron. Really, I just post all my outdoor deals, fishing, diving, hunting stuff. But yeah, that's where you can find it.
So what are you studying?
Right now I'm in marketing. I'm kind of interested in that stuff. I do a lot of video work already. It kind of goes along with YouTube videos. So
right on. Cool. Well, good stuff, man. Congrats on one hell of a fish. And I certainly enjoyed. Somebody just sent me the link to the article. It was like, have you seen this yet? And I was like, no, but golly, that's a huge snapper. We got to figure out what's going on here. So thanks for making time for us, and certainly enjoyed visiting with you.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
You too. Have a good one.